Hey Mumi, I got some bad news. The check from Studio Wit bounced.
Well, that's not really much of a surprise.
Well, do you still want to give a glowing review to spyxfamily, even though we're not being paid for it anymore?
You know what?
No, I will suffer through this.
Meet the Forgers. They're just your typical nuclear family. But in this little slice of domestic heaven, everyone has their secrets. Join Lloyd, the world's greatest secret agent, on his mission to maintain world peace. Supported by the lovely Yor, a mild-mannered clerk by day that moonlights as the deadly Thorn Princess, and a delightful Anya, Lloyd's adopted daughter that's secretly a telepath. Will Lloyd be able to succeed with the power of family? Or will their secrets tear their little family apart? This is one show that gives everyone loose lips. Spy Family. Shaken, not stirred, please.
This won't come through on the audio, but the whole time I was trying to choke myself out with my earbud wire. Just wrapping it around my neck, hoping I'll black out.
Well, maybe you'll succeed next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, Psy, what did you think about Spy Family?
I thought spyxfamily was great.
Oh, you're gonna emphasize the X there?
Oh, sorry. I thought Spy Cross Family was great.
I don't know, it's one of those shows that it's not like super impactful like on a philosophical level, but it's just enjoyable all the way around everywhere else.
Yeah, it's not particularly deep, and I don't think it's trying to be.
No. I mean more like, it doesn't necessarily stick with me. I'm not sitting there thinking about it after I watch it, but when I'm watching it, it's just kind of a pleasant experience all the way around.
Just like in the moment, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You know, I guess right off the bat, we could just talk about like what made this one stick out. Cause like, you know, there are a lot of found family and child rearing anime.
A lot of anime just about adoption.
Yeah. The agenda trying to repopulate all of Japan.
Adopt some kids.
But yeah, you got stuff like Usagi Drop. Hinamatsuri is probably the closest to this one.
Tonally, yeah.
Even you got like Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which is kind of more in the found family kind of category. But those shows, like, they kind of had a decent reception, but they didn't get as big as this did.
No.
So it kind of does beg the question, like, what is it about this one kind of stood out to people more so than...
Yor is hot. It's just that simple.
I mean, I do think it's pretty simple, but I'm not necessarily leaning toward Yor being...
So, you might not know this because you're like a little bit older, you know, than maybe your average anime viewer, but there's this website called Reddit. Have you heard of this?
I mean, I read the newspaper.
No, like, never mind. But there's this website called Reddit, okay? And it was really popular on that website. So, a really popular manga on Reddit gets an anime adaptation, it becomes just very popular in general.
I want to say, like, what the appeal of Spy Family is for a lot of people, at least, like, what I kind of get from it, is it's very easily digestible. They kind of blend the battle shonen kind of presentation of, like, a Death Note or, like, a Hunter x Hunter, where they're, like, trying to outmaneuver each other, and you get the peek into their thoughts. And...
I mean, you have the literal exam arc in the middle of the show.
Yeah, you have, like, the actual Hunter exam. Which, I think that, from what I've read, this is actually kind of inspired by Hunter x Hunter. Like, obviously, it's not, like, a direct, like, inspiration.
Are you sure about that?
Is that where the X in the name comes from?
Yes. So, like, the name was originally just Spy Family in katakana or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's too simple. But then they start talking about, like, how Hunter x Hunter had a simple name. And so they're like, oh, let's just make it English.
Put an X in
and
there.
then we'll just throw an X in there.
Easy peasy.
But yeah, I really appreciate the presentation of it, where it's that kind of just, like, battle shonen-y kind of style put into, like, a child-raising, found family kind of anime. I think that definitely kind of elevates it.
It makes it a bit more digestible because there are people who aren't going to enjoy something like Usagi Drop because it's too slice of life.
Yeah.
And there are people who aren't going to enjoy necessarily a straightforward spy thriller. So by kind of putting the two together, you're really casting a wide net in terms of appeal.
But it's interesting that the manga kind of took inspiration from Hunter x Hunter, Because then they, went out and got the director of the Hunter x Hunter 99 anime to come direct this adaptation.
Yeah, which is interesting. Which, just based on what I've seen of Hunter x Hunter 99, this is a very different beast in terms of direction. Which we should mention, they also directed You're Under Arrest as well, which was our first review.
It's almost like this whole In The Clubroom segment is just incestuous. Like, we keep reviewing Wit anime.
Now we're reviewing this guy's stuff again.
So I think what kind of makes the found family premise work so well in this setting, they're not like these fantasy creatures. They're just like these people that have, granted, they're larger than life kind of occupations, but they're not out of the realm of what we can kind of conceive. Like, they're just a spy and an assassin.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like in the fringes of society, but they've kind of just been pushed there by the world that they're kind of living in. You get a little bit of an interesting bit of ambiguity in the show. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily intentional or like that's kind of what they're trying to present, like, thematically. But, they introduce Yor's brother, Yuri, into the show. And, he's an antagonist. He's actively working against Lloyd's attempts at sabotaging their efforts or whatever. But he uses, like, the same rationalization for his actions as, like, Yor and Lloyd do.
Yeah.
So you kind of get this, like, little minor theme of, like, they're kind of all perpetuating this cycle of, like, violence.
Well, it's clearly meant to parallel, like, the Cold War in a lot of ways. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I think I read the setting is kind of based on Berlin or, like, Germany.
Yeah.
When it was kind of split.
That would make a lot of sense.
It's interesting because I don't really know where this is going thematically. I feel like the secret identities is kind of important thematically. I mean, it's obviously an ever-present part of the show, but it's not really commenting on the fact of these secret identities much.
Well, it's not causing conflict right now. We don't
not
have, like...
yet, no.
No, and I feel like, I feel like it will.
Which kind of, in a way, acts as like a little dangling carrot, I guess, for like season 2.
Yeah, a direction you could take it.
Yeah.
Whenever you want, really, because you have Anya, who is aware that Yor is an assassin and Lloyd is a spy, and neither of them are aware of each other's secret occupation, and they don't know that Anya knows. So you have like this sort of, it's almost like a Shakespearean sort of dramatic irony where Anya's kind of like the audience stand-in, where it's like, we know this stuff, Anya knows this stuff, but no one else does. And we're just kind of waiting for it to blow up, and to borrow like Hitchcock's idea of like, we know there's a bomb under the table, but the characters don't. And that's how you kind of add tension, even though this is not a tense show at all.
We read the script. Anya read the script.
How do you know that? Did you read the script too? Hey, what's that? What's that on the ground over there? Is that the script?
But that does, like, it adds like an interesting layer to it. But it is interesting how it handles this, as far as we're aware, a very serious conflict, like a very serious, like, sort of like Cold War espionage sort of thing, tense diplomatic relations. But we don't really see the material consequences of that.
No.
In theory, in terms of the literal premise, this is a very high stakes show.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really feel like that when you're watching it. It trivializes, I'd say, the conflict in a way that kind of makes it kind of cozy.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of just putting it all into the hands of these children when you think about it. Like,
yeah.
It's almost like the whole, I believe the children are the future kind of shit.
Yeah. There's also that aspect to it as well, which is interesting. But it's like, ostensibly, we are being told that the gun is loaded, but it kind of looks like a Nerf gun. That's what it feels like.
It does it with, like, this comedic effect, too, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, you as the viewer, and from Lloyd's perspective, and even Anya a little bit, I mean, she doesn't quite comprehend the scope of it. And they even play it for jokes when she does kind of try to comprehend it. But a lot of the comedy is from Lloyd just kind of having to deal with the fact that they're trying to accomplish this world-altering mission, and it's all kind of in the hands of just this child, and he has, like, no real control over it.
Yeah.
And it kind of used that for, like, characterization as well. You know, you get Lloyd, he kind of just comes off as, like, almost a really kind of strict father, and Yor kind of gets to step in and be like, let her have some fun kind of thing.
Yes.
And she's completely oblivious to the fact that the reason why he's acting this way is not because he's, like, just anal and wants his daughters to succeed. He just is, like, wants his mission to succeed.
He's just panicking a lot of the time.
Yeah. You do get that kind of bleed of where he starts kind of wanting Anya to succeed just because.
Well, I think that's meant to be the general direction of the show.
Yeah.
It's kind of the, for lack of a better word, domestication of Lloyd and Yor.
Yeah, like you kind of get that like later on where you start seeing like he starts struggling to like smoke cigarettes, like this thing that's kind of aesthetically linked with being a spy.
Yeah.
And they comment on it in the show like, hey, you haven't been smoking lately? He's like, oh, I got a daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of audio, like I came across Japanese man Yuta's channel, and he kind of pointed some stuff out that as Western speakers, we're not going to pick up on it. How she uses chichi and haha instead of the typical like okasan or otosan, or even like the formal versions of like oto-sama or okasama or whatever. It's weird because, I mean, chichi and haha sound just like pet names, but in Japanese, apparently, they're like third-person formal usage. You refer to your father in the third person as Chi-Chi. You're not referring to them directly. Like, you don't go to your dad and be like, hey, Chi-Chi.
Yeah.
Which is also weird because Chi-Chi, I think, is like boobs. It's an interesting bit of characterization because, like, when you think about it, she probably is getting put in these like more formal situations where like maybe the guy that's, you know, adopting her off is like, I'll meet your new father and mother, and he's saying it kind of more formally because it's a more formal occasion. You're adopting a child.
Yeah.
Maybe she just kind of links Chi-Chi and Haha to her adopted parents, because we do see like she has like this distinction in Chi-Chi and Haha and at least Mama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they're going through the interview, like the guy's like mentions her mom or mama or whatever, and she just like immediately starts breaking down. So she has like this distinction of like haha and her mom or mama or whatever. But it's kind of ingenious and interesting. The way it kind of plays out when she's speaking about their parents to people is it just kind of comes off as like she's this refined young lady because she's referring to her parents in the formal third person. She's like, oh, I quite like my father and mother, my Chi-Chi and haha. Like,
yeah.
And there's little like touches like that in the show that are just very, like, they show a lot of love and like care and thought put into the show.
It's very minor details that we as non-Japanese speakers would not even remotely pick up on.
人がゴミのようだ。
どこで覚えた？
見ろ、人がゴミのようだ。
アニメ。
And that you probably would not be thinking about a whole bunch if you did speak Japanese.
No, it's just like almost like flavor text in a way.
Yeah.
That's painting the show in one way, but you're not going to actively like sit there and dissect it unless you're just some fucking weirdo on the internet running a YouTube channel.
We're not weird.
We're the Weeb Crew, baby. Which I think kind of leads into like the action of it. The thing about the action, right, is it's not really taking itself seriously.
No, there's some stuff early on that's a little bit more serious, but by and large, it's pretty...
Well, even in those moments, like you had like in the first episode where Anya gets kidnapped, and that's kind of played more serious because she's like actually in danger.
Yeah.
Like even then, like you have these moments of brevity where like the kingpin or whoever he was, the ringleader or whoever, just offs the dude like in this comedic time fashion.
Yeah. Well, that's like relatively dark humor for what the rest of the show is.
Yeah. It's weird because like they have some hyper violence and
yeah, mostly with Yor's character later on.
Yeah, but it still comes off as like wholesome in a way.
Yes.
And like this weird bizarro like...
It's a weird sort of like reverse Gap Moe in a way, where, you know, Gap Moe is usually like, it would be cute to see like this like strict sort of assassin suddenly start acting like cute or flustered or whatever. But instead with Yor, what we have is a cute character, a flustered character. And then the Moe aspect kind of comes in with her being a serious assassin.
I think the Moe aspect of it is like, it's almost like a mother bear kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where she really kind of just like goes assassin mode for the most part. At least in the first season. I don't know what's going to happen later on, but...
Who knows?
In the first season, she just goes assassin mode when, like, Anya's in danger for the most part.
Yeah.
And so it kind of links this hyper-violence and, like, these darker kind of elements to the more familial, wholesome elements.
And the same goes for Lloyd as well.
Yeah.
In some ways, it feels like the mission at this point is almost sort of like an afterthought or even like a rationalization. If you just strip away that, you know, the element of Lloyd's mission, what you have is just a guy adopts a child, becomes a father, and is like trying to put her in like the best school and, you know, just like, you know, making sure she like succeeds in life.
You know, it's funny that you say rationalization because the thought kind of occurred to me, and this is going to get into the weeds of like Tin Hat conspiracy, right?
Uh-huh.
But like you could interpret this as like all being in Anya's head.
Oh.
Because she can read people's minds. But when you think about it, like maybe she's just like projecting thoughts onto these people.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah,
like, this is my new dad. He's super cool. He's a super spy. And this is my new mom. Like,
yeah. Almost kind of like she doesn't fully understand the world around her.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of like her like making stuff up in order to make some sort of sense of it.
I don't want to say like that's like an actual theory. It just, that thought came to mind at one point we were watching
That would
it.
be so stupid.
Since we're on the subject of like reading minds, that kind of ties into probably my only like criticism I could think of the show as like an adaptation, right? The manga of this, when she's reading their minds, she's literally reading their thought bubbles, right?
Yeah.
It's like a visual, just immediate link. Like, it's just like she's kind of breaking the fourth wall and is like, hey.
She's looking at the bubble in the panel.
Right. In the anime, they don't really do anything creative with that. Like, it's just kind of like them standing there, internal monologuing to themselves. If you were to mute it, it would look kind of awkward.
Yeah.
Because they're just standing there for like an awkward amount of time because obviously you're having to translate, all that they said in like a little panel that you can just register within like a second looking at it to like actually saying it out loud. And in that time, it kind of just makes it awkward.
Yeah.
I would say that was like my one criticism of this as like an adaptation. They didn't really try, like they do it a couple times, right? But a lot of the time, it's just kind of just them standing there, and it just looks like the manga panel, which I will say stands out in the show as being kind of like, mainly because as an adaptation, it's actually really fucking good. Like a lot of anime, right? Like especially like something that's kind of a slapstick comedy. Like they would just kind of, she would have like a reaction and like her face would just like immediately change and, the tone would just like shift on like a dime kind of thing. Because when you're reading in the manga, like, it just goes from panel to panel. There's not like a gradient or whatever. They kind of flesh out those little moments in this adaptation. You see like the little intricate kind of things leading up to moments. It fleshes out these movements and makes it more grounded in a way.
Okay. Kind of filling in the blanks between the panels.
Yeah. There's obviously like a level of just like a labor of love in this show that's kind of hard to deny when you kind of look at the production of it and just like the show itself. They added quite a bit to this.
Really?
From what I saw, like, was it episode 5? Where it's like the whole spy theme park thing?
Yeah.
That whole episode is like, I guess you would call it filler, technically.
Is it based off anything in the manga and they just expanded it?
Yes.
Or is it wholly... Okay.
But that whole section where it's like this quiz, all the, fighting and shooting each other, all that stuff with the spies, all that was just added in just to flesh out this like wholesome little moment where they're making this little girl's...
Like the whole theme park?
Yeah. Like that whole thing is just made up for the anime.
That's pretty good because, while watching it, I was like, this is really strange. So it's interesting that that is just kind of like being added in and expanded upon.
It kind of reminds me of Attack on Titan's finale in season 1, where they just decided they were going to make Eren catch on fire.
Okay.
And it was fucking stupid, like logically. And it doesn't make any sense to what was happening in the manga even. But it made sense to the pathos of the moment, I guess.
Yes.
And so they just kind of went with it.
Yeah.
And that kind of feels like this here, where it's like, they're like, hey, let's just flesh this out. Let's just have fun with it.
Yeah. And I know you weren't particularly fond of like some of the school stuff, and I remember you said it was kind of like slowing down a little bit as it's going along, but the show doesn't really have any like pacing problems.
No, really the school stuff is like not super long, and I really only had issue with 2 episodes, but I like look back on it.
Yeah.
Because the 3rd episode of the school stuff was...
The dodgeball episode.
Yeah, the dodgeball. Possibly the best episode in the show. It's funny, that episode actually kind of reminded me of like Magical Girls at the time when we were watching it.
Yeah, well, when Anya finally throws the ball, that just kind of like felt like a Magical Girl, almost like transformation sequence in a way.
Yeah, that you had like the Magical Girl attack.
Yeah.
That was the same episode that she got the star, right?
Right, yeah.
So like she's like sitting there, what is she, Starbright Anya or what?
スターライトアーニャと呼べ
Something like that. I think I even commented like, oh, that just sounds like a Mahou Shoujo show.
But it almost like sets it up where it could be one. Like the whole stars where she's like gonna earn stars by saving people. Like the whole communal like helping your community thing. Like, that's very magical girl.
You could even like consider like, oh, she has like, Esper power. She can read people's minds. That's kind of magical. They haven't really like explained that at all.
Yeah, I mean, that could literally just be her magical girl power. Is just
Yeah, and that's another direction the show could go in, is like developing, why does Anya, are there other people that can read minds or anything like that? Presumably there would be.
Yeah.
Because I think like it either hints or it directly states that like Anya is like the product of some sort of like state experiment, Johann Liebert type of thing.
Those darn German paperclip scientists.
Later in life, Anya will meet a Japanese doctor and just ruin his life.
We don't really have to get into spoilers or anything on this.
Well,
There's not really...
not a lot happens.
Not in this season, though.
No. It's not like, oh, the last episode, Lloyd dies or anything like that.
No, they don't even, like, try to do anything that kind of bookends anything.
No. That's probably because of the fact that this is a split core production.
Yeah.
But even then, yeah, it's not like ending on a massive cliffhanger of just like, you better tune in for next season.
Like, I thought they were going to introduce the dog, because, like, they have the dog in episode, was it 11?
Where's the dog coming? What's the dog doing?
What the dog doing?
Sheesh. We joked about Studio Wit at the start, but it's interesting that they have consistently been picking up these very specific projects that are kind of, I don't want to say like outsider work, but they feel a bit like atypical in terms of what would be popular right now.
I feel like I've heard that they kind of intended for Wit to be more of like a avant-garde studio.
Yeah, and then they made Attack on Titan.
Yeah, and then they just kind of got pigeonholed into the Attack on Titan role.
Into that for a bit. And ever since Mappa took over Attack on Titan, you've really, even before then, you do have just like
Rolling Girls.
Rolling Girls, yeah, Rolling Girls is like the go-to example, because that was like Attack on Titan, Ori no Seraph, and then Rolling Girls. That's strange, but all right.
Actually, Rolling Girls came out before War No Seraph.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, Rolling Girls was 2014.
And then there's stuff like Girl from the Other Side, Ancient Magus Bride, After the Rain, just a lot of, like, you think of Wit, you think of like an action studio,
Yeah.
But they do keep doing all of these like character dramas.
So I think we need to be fair on this, because this isn't just a Wit production. This is a joint production with Cloverworks.
Cloverworks, which is a subsidiary of A1.
But that kind of ties into like the labor of love kind of thing, right? They both wanted to like adapt this material, but they both kind of realized their limits and were like, hey, we're kind of already adapting and animating like all these different projects. We can't really fit this in and do what we want to do with it on this schedule. And that's what led to Wit and Cloverworks kind of teaming up on this project. And this isn't like they teamed up and like just some of the big names at one studio just kind of, directed the smaller names of another studio. Apparently they split up the episodes where like all the odd episodes were Wit Studio episodes and all the even episodes were Cloverworks episodes.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then apparently they actually like split like the key staff at both studios.
Huh.
It was a very cooperative project where they kind of try to match each other's styles and just keep it consistent, where even though it's switching from episode to episode, you're not getting like a Gurren Lagann episode 4 situation where it just looks completely fucking off the wall. Or even
Right.
An Evangelion Ghibli episode where it just looks like...
It's just like, why do they look a little bit cuter in this episode? Something's off.
Why do I want to fuck my sister in this episode? There's not really a whole lot of information on the mangaka. They had a few projects before Spy Family, and they didn't really take off.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of jokes about it. They're kind of like, how did you make Spy Family more successful than like your other work? And he kind of was just like, oh, I just sold out. Like, it's obviously he's being sarcastic, but there's probably a bit of truth in there where I can imagine, like, you see that a lot with mangaka, right?
Yeah.
Like, the go-to example for me that I always kind of point to is the mangaka for Nisekoi, because he had like a really creative series that he obviously put like a lot of time and effort into and was probably pretty passionate about, and it just got like canceled, and then he immediately comes out with the most like cynically like rom-com, just like never end triangle bullshit.
Yeah, is it kind of like a Scorsese, one for them, one for me kind of thing?
Yeah, like I imagine, like I just kind of imagine that sort of scenario, which obviously Spy Family is on a higher level than to just say it's just like cynically presenting all this stuff, but there probably was a bit of that for him there, where he probably felt like...
Well, we talked earlier about just like, broad appeal.
Yeah.
And I do think that was a bit by design.
For sure. Like, I don't think you can hit on all those things just by pure coincidence.
No. And that being said, a lot of success is based on luck, of course. But you can increase your chances by doing specific things. And making it an isekai.
Making it an isekai.
Making videos about isekai.
How long until Anya gets hit by a truck?
Oh, God.
Yeah, we're going off in the weeds here.
Yeah, we really are.
So, Psy, would you recommend people watch this show if they haven't already? All, like, 2 people that might be watching this that haven't watched the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad we can both agree that this is the best agenda anime to impregnate your fellow countrymen.
You will reproduce and have kids.
That was the real reason was overturned.
They just saw SpyxFamily. Okay, I think we'd all be very sad if Anya was.
Yeah, Spy Family, best magical girl show of the season.
I didn't think they'd get political.